There's something strange happening across America right now, and most people haven't even noticed the most dangerous part. 4 separate weather threats are lining up across the country at the exact same time. Not 1, not 2, 4. And each one of them has the power to destroy lives in a completely different way. In Texas, the air itself has become a weapon, hot enough to send you to the hospital just for stepping outside. In the desert Southwest, dry riverbeds are turning into walls of water in minutes. In the northern plains, the atmosphere is quietly loading a weapon it hasn't fired yet. And out in the Atlantic, something is happening that looks like good news, but is actually the opposite. If you want to understand what's coming and how to stay safe, stick around. I'll break down all 4 threats, and I'll tell you which one deserves your attention the most. Let's start with the heat, because it's the threat that's already here, and it's the one people underestimate the most. Right now, an extreme heat warning is in effect across North Texas, with temperatures hitting 106 to 108 degrees, and heat index values climbing past 112. This isn't a one-day spike. Dallas has now strung together roughly 7 straight days at or above 100 degrees, and forecasters are calling for that streak to keep going through at least Tuesday. Houston and San Antonio are sitting in the low 100s. Austin's right there with them. And this heat isn't confined to Texas. The National Weather Service has been blunt about it. Dangerous heat persists across the desert Southwest through this weekend and across the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley through at least the middle of next week. Numerous daily record highs are expected across Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Arizona before this thing finally lets go. Here's the detail that should actually worry you more than the daytime number. Overnight lows aren't dropping enough to give anyone's body a break. Forecasters in Houston have specifically pointed to lows sitting in the upper 70s to low 80s night after night, with a stubborn area of upper-level high-pressure limiting cloud cover and trapping the heat in place. Think about what that actually does to a person. Your body needs the cool of night to recover from a hot day, to bring your core temperature back down before the sun comes up and starts the cycle again. When the night barely cools off, you go to bed hot, you wake up hot, and the next day starts already behind. That's not a discomfort problem. That's a cumulative, compounding danger, and it's exactly why heat quietly kills more Americans in an average year than tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods combined. It doesn't get the dramatic footage. Nobody films a heat wave the way they film a collapsing building. But the data doesn't care what makes good video. Heat is the quiet killer. It doesn't make dramatic videos. It doesn't get the same attention as tornadoes. But it kills more people every year than any other weather hazard. Your body is designed to maintain a core temperature of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When the air temperature is higher than that, your body has to work hard to cool itself down. It does this through sweating. But sweating only works if the sweat can evaporate. When the humidity is high, sweat doesn't evaporate. It just sits on your skin, and your body keeps getting hotter. When the nights don't cool off, your body never gets a chance to recover. Day after day, the heat stress accumulates, and that's when people start dying. Elderly people are especially at risk, as are children, people with pre-existing health conditions, and people without access to reliable air conditioning. Outdoor workers are also at high risk. Farm workers, construction workers, and delivery drivers. If you're anywhere in this corridor right now, here's what actually matters. Check on elderly neighbors, especially the ones who live alone. Never leave a child or a pet in a parked car, not even for a minute. Drink water before you feel thirsty. Thirst means you're already behind. Know the warning signs of heat illness: keep heavy, sweating, dizziness, nausea, and cramping mean stop. Get cool, get hydrated. Confusion, slurred speech, and skin that's hot but stops sweating means the body's cooling system has failed. That's a medical emergency. There's also a slower, quieter danger sitting underneath this heat that most people never think about, until it's already a problem. The power grid itself. When triple-digit heat holds for a week straight, air conditioning demand climbs to its yearly peak at the exact moment transmission lines are least efficient. Heat causes power lines to sag and lose some of their carrying capacity. Grid operators across Texas have already flagged elevated demand this week, and while nobody's predicting outages, an extended heat wave like this one is exactly the scenario that occasionally forces rolling conservation requests. If you're in the affected corridor, it's worth having a basic plan for what you do without air conditioning for even a few hours. A cooling center, a library, a friend's place, somewhere you could go if your own home stopped being safe for a stretch of the afternoon. There's a fourth piece, riding along with the same heat dome, that deserves its own mention, because it's producing a genuinely different kind of danger just a few hundred miles west. The desert Southwest is deep into its summer monsoon right now, and the same intense heat baking Arizona and New Mexico is also fueling rounds of sudden torrential thunderstorms across the Four Corners region. NOAA's Weather Prediction Center has been placing parts of Arizona and New Mexico under real flash flood risk multiple times over the past few weeks. This pattern isn't done yet. If you live near a wash, an arroyo, or a slot canyon anywhere in that region, you already know how fast this can turn dangerous. Monsoon flash floods don't build gradually the way river flooding does. A wash that's bone dry in the morning can become a genuine wall of water within minutes of a storm, hitting the watershed miles upstream, even under a completely clear sky right above you. Stay out of slot canyons and low-lying desert terrain anytime storms are anywhere in the forecast, not just when you can see them. Here's the part that makes this whole regional picture even stranger, though. Even with all of that monsoon rain falling, it hasn't been enough to meaningfully break the underlying drought gripping the broader Intermountain West. An 82-mile stretch of the Middle Rio Grande in New Mexico has actually dried up completely this year. For areas that missed the heaviest monsoon rainfall, especially eastern Colorado and New Mexico, are still drying out even as their neighbors 100 miles away deal with flash flood warnings. That's not a contradiction. It's exactly what monsoon rainfall does. It falls in isolated, intense bursts rather than broad soaking coverage, which means one town gets a flash flood emergency, while the town not far away gets nothing at all. Now let's talk about the second threat, the one that's still building rather than fully here yet. If you've seen other weather channels this week promising an explosive tornado outbreak this weekend, I want to push back on that gently, because it's not what the actual forecast data shows. The Storm Prediction Center's real outlook for today has the severe weather risk sitting at just 5% for any severe weather at all, and Saturday's tornado risk was rated low. That's not nothing, but it's also not the kind of setup that justifies panic. And what's actually happening is more interesting and honestly more useful to understand, because it's the textbook mechanism behind why these two threats, heat and storms, are connected in the first place. Here's the mechanism. That dome of hot, high pressure sitting over the southern and central plains isn't just making things hot underneath it. It's acting like a wall. The atmosphere doesn't like sitting still, and when you have that much heat locked in one place, the air around the edges of that dome starts getting pushed and pulled, clashing with cooler air riding in from the north and west. That collision zone, right along the northern edge of the heat dome, is where thunderstorms get their energy. Right now, that edge is sitting up across the northern plains and into the upper Midwest, and it's produced scattered rounds of gusty storms and hail over the past several days without turning into anything catastrophic. But forecasters are watching something build a bit further out. The Storm Prediction Center's extended outlook is now flagging a stronger disturbance digging into the Pacific Northwest by the end of this week, and as it moves east, it's expected to interact with that same boundary running along the northern plains and Midwest, raising the chance of more organized severe weather by late week into the weekend. Now, let's talk about the part of the story that almost nobody's talking about, and it might be the strangest piece of the whole pattern. The Atlantic Ocean, the place hurricanes are supposed to be born this time of year, is doing something unusual. We are heading directly into the most dangerous stretch of the entire hurricane season. The climatological peak falls on September 10th, and right now the Atlantic has produced exactly two named storms all year, Arthur and Bertha, neither reaching hurricane strength. NOAA's most recent update puts odds of a below normal season at 75%. That sounds like straightforwardly good news, and on the surface, it is. Fewer storms generally means fewer coastlines getting hit. But here's the catch, and it's the part that actually deserves your attention. A strong El Niño out in the Pacific has been driving unusually intense wind shear across the Atlantic all summer, and wind shear is a hurricane's natural predator. Picture a developing storm as a spinning tower of thunderstorms that needs to stay stacked directly over its own center to strengthen. Shear pushes the top of that tower one direction while the bottom stays put, tilting the whole structure until it can't hold itself together. That's exactly what's been happening to nearly every disturbance that's tried to organize in the Atlantic this year. But that ocean water hasn't gone anywhere. All summer, the Atlantic has been absorbing heat with almost no storms coming along to churn it up and release that energy. The warmth just keeps building underneath a lid of hostile upper-level wind, like a pot with the heat turned up and the burner never actually shut off. This El Niño isn't a small one. NOAA's Climate Prediction Center now puts the odds of a very strong El Niño event at greater than 90% heading into the fall and winter. So, what happens if that shear relaxes even briefly as we move into September, the way it climatologically tends to? A storm that finally breaks through would have access to all that stored up ocean energy at once. It could intensify explosively, going from a disorganized system to a major hurricane in a matter of days rather than the week or more storms usually take. That kind of rapid intensification is one of the most dangerous scenarios in all of weather, because it leaves almost no time for coastal communities to prepare. History backs this up directly. Some of the quietest Atlantic seasons on record still produced one or two genuine monsters. 1992 is the textbook example. That season, by nearly every measure, was a quiet one. And 1992 still produced Hurricane Andrew, one of the most destructive storms in U.S. history. The seasonal number that gets reported in headlines and the number of storms that actually determine whether your specific coastline has a disaster on its hands are simply not the same statistic. NOAA's own messaging says it explicitly. It only takes one storm making landfall to make your season the worst one of your life. A below normal forecast has never been the same thing as a safe one. Treating them as interchangeable is one of the most common and costly misreadings of a below normal forecast. It's worth glancing at the Pacific side of this story too, because it's the mirror image of everything happening in the Atlantic. The Central Pacific is dealing with back-to-back systems near Hawaii, with the National Hurricane Center currently issuing advisories on both Hurricane Lala and Tropical Storm Oak at the same time. That's the El Niño signature playing out in real time. Suppressed in one ocean, supercharged in the other, happening on opposite sides of the same continent in the same week. For Hawaii, specifically, that's a genuinely tough spot to be in, since it means back-to-back systems arriving before the ground, and the infrastructure from the first one have had a real chance to recover. That's exactly the kind of compounding risk that turns a moderate storm into a serious one. So, what do I actually want you to walk away with? The heat is real, it's dangerous, and it's here right now across Texas and the southern plains, with little overnight relief and at least another week to run. That's the threat requiring your attention today. The monsoon flooding risk sits right alongside it, a few hundred miles west, driven by the exact same heat baking the desert floor. The severe storm risk is genuinely building along the northern edge of that heat dome. But it's not the guaranteed weekend catastrophe some corners of the internet are selling you. It's a real signal worth watching. The silence isn't the same thing as safety. It's stored energy waiting for the door to open. And we're heading straight into the exact stretch of the calendar when that door tends to open. If you live anywhere in the heat corridor right now, respect it the way you'd respect a genuine emergency. Because it is one, even though it doesn't look like one. If you're in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, or anywhere in the southern plains, check on elderly neighbors, never leave a child or pet in a parked car, drink water before you feel thirsty, know the warning signs of heat illness, and have a plan if the power goes out. If you live anywhere in Arizona, New Mexico, or the wider Four Corners region, treat every monsoon storm as a flash flood risk by default. Stay out of slot canyons and low-lying desert terrain. The water that reaches you can start falling miles away. If you live anywhere along the developing storm boundary in the northern plains or upper Midwest, keep your phone's weather alerts turned on. That's exactly the kind of setup that can sharpen up with only a day or two of real notice. If you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic seaboard, don't let a quiet ocean lull you into skipping your hurricane prep. Know your evacuation zone. Have your supplies ready. Check your insurance now, before there's an active storm. If this breakdown helped you understand what's coming, hit that like button, because it helps more people find this in time to prepare. Subscribe so the next update lands right in your feed. Drop a comment. Which of these 4 threats are you actually watching where you live? The heat, the monsoon flooding, the storms, or the tropics? And if this helped you, check out my video on the Mount Rainier earthquake swarm. Stay weather aware. Look out for your neighbors. I'll see you in the next one.